Welcome to the spring season of the Missing Witches podcast, our kinship season, which is dedicated to getting familiar with our familiars. This is where we take time to learn from our more than human kin. In the fall, we'll do a season dedicated to people's stories again, our classic Missing Witches stories, and throughout the summer, we'll have Witches Found, interviews, our list of people to learn from about craft and magic and resistance and re-enchantment is long and fertile. But in the spring, we need to balance out against people logic by digging into soil, learning about the plants and animals and rocks and winds and waters that are us too, as we wind our wild ways through the hollow biont that we all are here on Earth. These episodes were originally conceived of as tongue-in-cheek, anti-capitalist, motivational meditations, and we hope you'll take these offerings in that original sense. Seed bombs hurled on the pristine, dying lawns of Mondays. Blessed fucking be.
I was not successfully a houseplant person on my own. In my 20s, I lived with my friend Emily in an apartment that looked out over Mount Royal, with these old wood-framed French doors and a wrought iron railing, not a balcony, just a 10-foot window with a balustrade, 4 floors up in the air that made you want to lean out into the wind and sing. Sometimes our neighbor would lean out of his French doors next door and drunkenly play the trumpet. It was that kind of thing. A wild and flourishing thing. For a while. A fast road wound immediately below like a river, and we could see a convent with its dwindling numbers of cloistered nuns silently keeping their secrets, pacing their 4th-floor balcony on the next block behind the consulate. And beyond that was all the fierce movement of wind in trees up the hill made into a park by the urban planner who had also made Central Park, a lung maker in cities, Mount Royal. Emily kept a little tree alive in that apartment, but barely, and it died when she left for that room on Vancouver's east side with the shared bathroom down the hall. For love, for music, for love. I had 1 spider plant, which became like 7 in the way of spider plants. Maybe our 20s are spider plant years. At first, I was very pleased with that plant and with myself, an offshoot of one my mother kept alive. I was delighted with the way it shot out long stems and grew roots in the air like white fingers finger-walking, looking for better soil. Proud of my little babies. But after cutting and transplanting a few into more poor soil, I have to admit, I came to hate them. They were everywhere failing. Pale yellow leaves, white knobby little obscene root fingers on every end, creeping dry and ugly across the rain-damaged wood floors. They never quite died, but they weren't happy either. But those little fingers were reservoirs. Even when the leaves failed, the plant was storing life for later. The house plant we call the spider plant, Chlorophytum comosum, is native to tropical and southern Africa. It evolved in wet, shady river valleys, forest edges where light flutters down through trees and water is stored in thick roots that help it make the relay through drought season. When we import it into our kitchens and living rooms, its biology still remembers. Long, arcing leaves above, cascading through canopies, underground resonating thick and wet. What we call a houseplant is a migrant, although that's not the most accurate metaphor, is it, from human experience? For someone who is taken from Africa without their permission and forced to adapt to small containers, icy winters, food that makes you sick, body subjected to the concept of property and being property. Did I remember to say that these kinship meditations are and have always been anti-imperialist seed bombs thrown onto parched lawns, that we are here in the coven we create between our ears to dream, to wonder in widening circles about how to resist the death cults that have evolved and expanded their logic, reaching from early to late stage capitalist expansion, slavery, monocropping, and international trade in living beings, systems that evolve and shape the kyriarchy, keeping resources flowing up to high, narrow peaks, increasingly detached from the web and susceptible to collapse. And did I say that we will write from here a kind of threnody to all the beings and ideas and relations and witches we are missing, to try and together re-enchant the world? That it will be imperfect, and we will do it anyway. And we will just try not to fuck it up too much. I was miserable, as were my spider plants. But we were tough and knobby and difficult to kill. I didn't want to understand what they were saying about me and the situation we were in. I had a migraine for 10 years, but I looked away from the information that the spider plants were scratching in the air and the edges of that apartment. They were living what I was too. A not thriving, a longing to walk away on ghostly new appendages, a memory of a life that was more alive. Because by then, Emily had moved out and my boyfriend had moved in, and he smoked weed all day long and built a supercomputer with 12 Linux machines running time trials, humming like an airport all night long. We had fun too, and we made wild art events together, but we couldn't figure out how to make it sustainable, the love or the business. And the plants got sicker and sicker, and the pipes never worked well, and then the bathtub coughed up black gunk, and we got behind on our rent and hid from the handyman because we owed him money, and because I was scared of him, the way he'd cornered me in the bathroom once, and I felt the air full of threat, and the stench of rot in the black bath, and the way he'd bang on the doors in the night, and we'd pretend not to be home. Only ghosts here creaking. We made it out. It wasn't pretty, but we did it. We had that white, middle-class settler-colonizer privilege of second chances. A friend who was moving signed over his lease to us, a cheaper, smaller apartment, no plants. Eventually, I left the relationship, too. To do it, I had to leave everything and walk out the door one day into the snow and then start calling people to see where I could sleep that night. I took a series of crummy jobs until I got one that offered me a balance of corporate safety and some space for my community building magic and some time and resources to breathe a little bit. I had to find in my body a version of myself that I could recognize. In the following years, I threw my body, sometimes recklessly, out of the Mile End in Montreal and into the world. I went to South Africa and sat on Table Mountain in the fog with my little sister as she slowly acclimated her body to the grief of leaving the pregnant mothers she had dedicated the last year of her life to in Uganda behind. I didn't know it, but the spider plants were there. I went to Vietnam and walked for hours to sit in dark caves where the Buddha had come to worship a presence in the earth that people had come to pray for their children for thousands of years before he joined them. I went to Miami and Shanghai and Nashville, lots of places, sometimes for work, always to meet hologram versions of me and see what they knew. It was a total privilege and also a kind of compulsion. Sometimes I watched myself from the outside shaking my head. Sometimes I put myself in bad places. It was related to the drinking and the weed and the cigarettes. It was a pure form of whatever that harmonic was I was always chasing. The spider plant's most famous habit is reproduction by wandering. Instead of relying mainly on seeds, spider plants grow long, flowering stems that produce tiny plantlets, miniature clones at their tips. These dangle in the air until gravity or an animal like a human being brings them into contact with soil, where they grow roots and begin again. Botanists describe these stems as inflorescences carrying vegetative offsets. The strategy is one of dispersal without forgetting. Each new plant is genetically the same individual, extending itself outward, a living network of selves, an everywhere self, everywhere seeking. Not children exactly, more like fingertips of the same body, reaching for another surface. When a spider plant sends out its long, arching stems and forms little plantlets at the tips, those plantlets are produced through vegetative reproduction. No pollen, no mixing of genes, no second parent. Each plantlet grows directly from the tissues of the parent plant and carries the same DNA. Botanically, they're clones, genetically identical extensions of the same organism. This means the hanging chains of spiderettes are not a family tree, but a body spreading outward. Many plants use similar strategies. Strawberries send runners, aspens share underground roots, but the spider plant does it midair, suspending its future selves like a mobile of green comets waiting to land. Because the houseplants are almost always propagated this way, millions of spider plants across the world belong to just a handful of ancient genetic individuals. The most common variegated forms, cultivars like vitatum or variegatum, have been reproduced almost entirely by cloning since the 19th century, when they were first circulated through European botanical gardens and horticultural trade. Every time someone hands a friend a spider plant baby, the same organism stretches a little farther through the human world. Its body exists as a scattered archipelago, everywhere seeking. I am spider plant kin, everywhere seeking. Spider plants remind me of another distributed body. In 1951, Henrietta Lacks, a mother of 5 children, was bleeding, and she went to Johns Hopkins, one of the only hospitals that would treat a Black woman with cancer, in their colored people's ward. when treating her cervical cancer by stitching radium inside her cervix, the best treatment at the time. Doctors took cells from a tumor in her cervix without her knowledge. They were taking cells from every patient, black and white, in keeping with protocols that were considered acceptable at the time. That doesn't make it right, does it? To take from us without asking us, especially cancer patients from whom everything is being taken. Time with our kids, especially Black cancer patients from whom everything is being taken. Dignity, comfort. She should have gotten to know before she died at 31. Her children should have gotten to know that Henrietta's cancer cells, HeLa cells, didn't die. They kept dividing. Her cancer cells taught cancer researchers the difference between carcinoma in situ and invasive cancers like mine. Oncologists used HeLa cells to test the toxicity of chemotherapy without having to test it on patients. Henrietta Lacks saved my life, and millions of others. Her cells helped develop polio and COVID-19 vaccines, cancer treatments, gene mapping, IVF, decades of biomedical research. They've grown in labs across the planet, frozen and thawed and shipped through the mail, been sent into orbit. And the woman they came from was a Black tobacco farmer whose family remained poor for decades, while the global biomedical industry benefited from her body. Johns Hopkins never sold or profited directly from the discovery or distribution of HeLa cells. They offered them freely and widely for scientific research. And they also acknowledged that from the beginning, things could have been and should have been different for Henrietta. And though Johns Hopkins didn't sell the cells multiplied into a healthcare system in the United States that is designed to profit. Even in Canada, where my millions of dollars of life-saving treatment have cost me a total of $100 a month in the equivalent of a pharmaceutical copay, 1/6 of people with my cancer will go bankrupt within a few years of diagnosis. And in the States, nearly half of patients report catastrophic financial burden, starting with $40,000 a year in debt from the day of diagnosis. They're skipping pills because they can't afford them. Our systems are full of this story, knowledge and wealth for the few, built from bodies that weren't asked, that didn't consent, that haven't been paid, that suffer still from the diseases you robbed them to cure. Black women suffer exponentially from breast cancers and cervical cancers. To think of the tropical plant trade in relation to slavery or for-profit healthcare is maybe fucked up, or maybe the way neo-feudalist capitalism extracts and trades living and life-giving beings for profit without care for the environments they disrupt on either end is slavery logistics and technology expanded. It moves through our bodies and systems at every level. We eat it and it's covered in microplastics. Chemo poisoned me and saved me and shortened my lifespan and gave me my daughter's childhood. And I want to say all this, not to make us more sick with the knowing, but because I need to love the real, bizarre, broken truth of it all to make good on what I've been given in being here right now in your ears. To love this fucked up moment for what it is and not keep running or masking or escaping, throwing myself off Table Mountain or into the arms of strangers in cities I don't even like. I need to transmute the fear and horror into a high that goes all the way through and down and between. Roots me in to deep reservoirs and requires open eyes, missing fingers, the magic of actually being here and alive together. Lucille Clifton wrote, "We take what we want with invisible fingers." And her fingers were poetry and spirit talking and the sheer power of rising generations demanding justice. And they were also real fingers. She had an extra finger removed when she was a child, and this ghost appendage ran in her family. And I think of her now when I think of spider plants on the run inside me, inside all of us. Where are we nourished and where are we starving, witches? And with what behaviors and thoughts and emotions are we flailing our ghost appendages, hoping to hit a patch of better soil? Spider plants are living organisms with their own evolutionary histories, their own strategies, their own stories, their own insistence on continuing right through it all. Spider plants belong to the asparagus family, which links them to agaves and other ancient monocots, whose evolutionary lineage stretches back tens of millions of years. I have white asparagus here in the forest that are called living fossils. Some chlorophytum are used as vegetables or medicinal plants in parts of Africa. Even the common spider plant's leaves and roots contain minerals like potassium, calcium, and magnesium, and have been eaten in small quantities as a pot herb. For more than a century, it's been propagated almost entirely by cloning, like immortal cells, endlessly dividing. The plant's life unfolds in forests and kitchens, classrooms and dormitories. Neglect gives it brown tips, and affection multiplies it endlessly. And all that time they were quietly holding water, cleaning the air. The spider plant is a species that has learned, like us, to travel by relationship. Even when the relationships were toxic, we were throwing our bodies into the bright unknown together. Imagine, witches, a spider plant way of knowing, of responding to violation and extraction. The spider plant multiplies, a distributed organism, a quiet diaspora of the same green body moving in green time, breathing always in binary balance with the colonizers, keeping lifeblood underground, forking, finger walking, making possibilities, improving the odds. This February, I had my ovaries removed. They test everything I do for cancer now, and I just found out the pathology report from the ovaries came back negative, and relief is rain, and hope stores up in reserves for the next time. I'm not the same body I was before, but I'm not new material either. I'm a body revised, pruned, regrown. I carry the sacred Hela cells and stardust. There is today an asteroid belt named for Henrietta Lacks, one in space like the one here on Earth, an archipelago of impact, of living stories, made one by gravity, orbiting through space and time, as above, so below. My body is here in Quebec, but other versions of me exist in the places I've been and breathed and left skin cells and memories. with the fog ghosts on Table Mountain, sweating in the caves in Vietnam, waves in microphones through speakers scattering on. Not one thing, but a pattern spreading. Roots appearing wherever the conditions allow life to continue. We live with old travelers. We live with vast, ancient organisms whose bodies are one body. A few giants spanning continents, quietly extending through human homes, creeping along until machines which seemed inescapable inevitably clank and clatter into rust. We are spider plant kin, reaching for each other across time and space and bias and brutality. Witches and gardeners and caretakers who kept seeds and stories, the spelling and the grammar, spells and grimoires of how to be in patterns with each other that are not based on violation and extraction, but on that weird, spurting, wild madness of life, the living world, the magic of becoming. We are spider plant kin. Scientists and poets smuggling truths past the brutality of delusional fascism. Queer people who learn to root in the cracks and expand. Troublemakers and healers. Women and trans people who knew they were not object, not lesser, not weaker than, but simply gloriously alive and glowing in the right to be happy and seek happiness in this body, this skin. All beings who remember in their cells that the world is made of relations, not resources. We are crafting our spider plant kinship, building our minds and systems and logic back into one body. The body we are that we've forgotten in our trauma states. A living rootwork spreading quietly through kitchens, forests, classrooms, covens, laboratories, and city blocks. We are a body that refuses extinction. We are a body that refuses obedience. We are a body that keeps sending out runners. We are spider plant kin. Blessed fucking be.
Hi, this is Amy.
And Risa from the Missing Witches podcast and Coven.
Each May, we donate 100% of our Coven membership earnings to the Native Women's Shelter of Montreal, and we rally our community to raise money for Indigenous-led support organizations.
By contributing incredible prizes for our draw, donating, and signal boosting, we all make a hopeful wave of repair together.
We make reparations to re-enchant the world. This year, we're weaving the biggest web yet, and we'd love for you to join us.
Donate, share, or come become part of the Coven. We believe community is something we build together.
We built Missing Witches because we were missing you.
So check out missingwitches.com/reparations.